Hi, this is another video about the Nonlinear Animation Editor or NLA in Blender. In the last couple of weeks I released another video about the very basics of Blender's animation system like keyframes, curves, actions and so on. And then I also released an overview of the NLA. I recommend watching these videos before moving to this one, because here we'll take things up a notch. We'll be working with a rigged character and create this animation by combining and mixing several actions. And I hope this will cement the fundamentals we covered last time, and it will introduce even more cool features of the NLA. If you want to support CGDive, you can join me on Patreon. You can also get 20% off all my Gumroad products using coupon code CGDive at checkout. Okay, in last video we used a simple geometric object to demonstrate the features of the NLA. Working with rigged characters is slightly more complex, although the same principles apply. The main difference is that the keyframes of all bones in an armature can be stored in the same action. In the case of objects, each action only stores the keyframes of one single object. If I have two objects like here, I cannot store the movement of both objects in the same action. For example, I already have an action for this cone. And now if I select the cube and try to add new keyframes, that will require me to create a new action, an action for the cube. I can assign the cone action to this cube, but that will only assign the same keyframes to it. So if I edit this action, then the same edits will be seen in the cone object. So both objects are simply using the same action. That also means that I cannot combine these actions in the NLA because each object has its own NLA track, as you can see here. One for the cube and one for the cone. Now I'm going to go to frame 0 and unlink these actions and move the cube to the side. Now if I just create an armature and place a bone at each of the objects and then parent both objects to the armature with automatic weights, then the armature will start controlling these objects. Now I can animate the bones in pose mode. I'm going to just set a keyframe for both bones at frame 1 and then randomly move to another frame and just set some poses for these objects. And as you can see, that allows me to move both objects independently within the same action. That is actually one of the main reasons for using an armature in the first place. That way we have everything neatly in one place and we can use the NLA to create complex mixing of actions. Okay, now let's try this. I'm going to go to frame 1, unlink this action and create a new one. And here I'm going to create a keyframe just for the box bone. And then go to frame 40 and move it a bit and set another keyframe. Give it a fake user and at frame 1 unlink it. And now I'm going to create a whole new action. And this time I'm only going to keyframe the cone bone. Okay, so I have one action that moves the cone and another one which only moves the cube. Now let's move both of these new actions to the NLA. And now if I play through the NLA, I'll have both of them moving at the same time. Even though the action strip at the top has blending set to replace. If you watched the previous video, this should make sense. The action that moves the cone does not have any keyframes for the box bone. So the keyframes from the lower action pass through and make it into the final result. If I select this action and press tab and add location, rotation and scale keyframes for the cube and press tab again, then the cone action will start overriding the action below it. I think this should be clear, but I think it needs to be said explicitly just in case. So always keep in mind what is keyframed and what is being mixed. Okay, now we can move to a more complex example, which is an actual rigged character. I got this cartoony girl model from BlendSwap and I adapted it a bit and rigged it again with Rigify. As you probably know, I kinda like Rigify and use it a lot. If you want to follow along, you can download this same blend file from my free repository on Gumroad. But of course you can also use your own character. As long as you understand the principles of using the NLA, you should be just fine. So now we need a couple of actions. Idle, walk, and run will be a good start in my opinion, and then later we'll add a few more actions on top of that. I don't want to make this video 5 hours long by showing you how to set each keyframe for each action, so I'm going to use some shortcuts. For the walk and run animations, I'll use the add-on Rigify Animbox. This add-on is awesome. I can't wait to make a full video just about it. It is a free add-on on Gumroad, but of course if you can, please throw some cash at the creator. Oh, and by the way, Animbox was just updated the day before I started recording this video. Definitely download the latest version because it contains cool new features and fixes. When you install the add-on, you'll have this RA tab. Then you just select your Rigify Armature. Rigify Animbox obviously only works with Rigify. You go to pose mode and you can create a magic walk and magic run. And that will create a walk and run actions for you. I already went ahead and did that. So I have my walk. I have tweaked the arm poses just slightly, but other than that, it's just a default magic walk, and same for the run. And I also have an idle animation. It's just the character in a relaxed pose and the body is rocking back and forth. So again, I want to emphasize that it's important to keep in mind which controls are keyframed. For the idle animations, that's the leg IK controls, the torso control, and the chest, which is rotating. In the run animation, that is again the torso, IK controls, chest, and the arms. The arms were also keyframed in the idle animation, I didn't show it. And more or less the same for the walk. Something very important is that Magic Walk and Magic Run switches the arms to FK mode. So the IK FK slider will be set to 1. But it doesn't set a keyframe for this slider. And that is totally normal, it's not a bug or anything, but you'll see how you have to be mindful of this when we work with NLA clips. In the idle animation, I also used FK arms, so for now we'll be fine. The problem will become apparent a little bit later when we add extra actions. Okay, next, let's push these 3 actions to the NLA. Idle, walk, and run. And now I'll establish the basic timing of my animation. I want the character to stay idle at first, then start walking, and finally transition into running. So I'm going to leave the idle animation as it is. Then I'm going to move the walk animation towards the end of the idle action strip. I'll leave a little bit of an overlap between them, and then I'll make this strip repeat, let's say 4 times. And then I'll do something similar with the run strip. I'll let it overlap a little bit with the walk one and make it repeat 5 times. So now if you play through the animation, we have exactly what we wanted. The character is idling, then she switches to walking, and finally to running. But as you can see, these transitions are very sudden, and the NLA allows us to create smooth transitions. So let's see how we can do that. And that is done by using the blend in and blend out options. We can set them manually if we wanted to. But Blender has this auto blend in and out option, and in this case it will work very well. So I'm going to activate it for all of my action strips here. And you'll notice a sloped line appear on each strip exactly where the strips overlap. So this option automatically adjusts the blending of each strips depending on the overlap between the strips. By the way, if I move the strip now, you'll see that the overlap changes and thus the blending changes automatically. I'm going to undo this. Now if I play through the action, we have smoother transitions, but you may notice that at the transition, the arms are lifted slightly and then they go into their proper position. And that is because if I press H to disable this walk action and then go through the idle action, you'll see that as I reach the blend out section, the default T-pose start to show through. And I found that, I'm going to activate this strip again by pressing H. I found that if I change the blending from replace to combine, that fixes this problem. As you can see, the transition became much more natural. And I'm going to do the same thing for the run. Combine. I don't have a good explanation as to why that works, which is killing me. Usually I like to have a proper explanation of what I'm doing, but let's roll with it and keep that in mind. Now I'm going to make the run overlap a little bit more, and let's see what we have here. As you can see, we have a smooth transition, but the character kind of weirdly jumps in place as she switches to running. And that is because we are blending at the wrong place. Both the run and the walk start with the same foot forward, with the right foot forward, right? So here I'm blending the end of the walk with the beginning of the run, and that ends up mixing right foot forward with left foot forward, which gives a weird result. So what we can do is make the walk repeat, let's say 4.5 times or so, and then we'll overlap the run with this last half step that the character takes. And now we have a much smoother and more natural transition. So next, I want to create 2 more actions to make this animation more interesting and to show some interesting problems. The actions themselves will be very simple. In one, the character will be waving, and in another one, she'll be looking at her watch. So first, go to frame 1 and untick all actions. Let's select all bones and clear all transforms. And now, of course, I can create these 2 simple actions using FK arms. But just to cause some trouble, I'm going to switch to IK mode for this right arm. The left arm I'm going to leave alone because my wave and look at watch action will only be performed on the right arm. Okay, now I'll create a new action, call it wave. And now on frame 1, I'm going to position the arm and hand like that. I'll also rotate the elbow. And add rotation keyframe for this control, and location and rotation for this one. And then on frame 10, I'm going to move the arm towards the head and rotate it slightly, and set another location and rotation keyframe. And then simply Shift D and copy these keyframes to frame 20. And now we have a very simple looping wave action. And that's all we need for the wave. I'm going to go to frame 1, set fake user and unlink this action, create a new one, call it check watch. And now let's reset these controls. Okay, on frame 1, I'll want the arm to be kind of down like this. Set location and rotation keyframe, and also one rotation keyframe for the elbow control. And then I'll go to frame 30, for example, and move the arm towards the chest. And set a location and rotation keyframe. And I also want the character to look at the watch, so let's set a rotation keyframe for the head like this. And then I'll go back to frame 1 and press Alt-R to reset this rotation and set another rotation keyframe. Okay, I want my character to look at her watch for a while, so let's just copy all of these keyframes to frame 45 or so. And then on frame 50, she moves the hand away. Location and rotation, and let's reset the head as well. That is maybe too sudden, so let's move these frames to 55, and that will do. Obviously, this is not a tutorial on how to make a great animation. Now we are ready to push these actions to the NLA, but before that, let's mix things up with a little bit of theory. We already covered tracks and strips in the previous video, but there are a few details. First, pushing down an action often creates a new track automatically, but when there is space for that action on the topmost existing track, then it will be placed there. So now if I press push down, my check watch action will be added to the topmost existing track. Let's undo. Another little detail is that this little button here actually does the exact same as the push down button over here. Just use whichever is more convenient at the time. I'm going to undo again. There is another way to add tracks to the NLA, aside from pushing them down, and here's how to do it. I'm going to fake user this action and unlink it. And now, while hovering over in the NLA, I'm going to press Shift A, and that will give me the list of all existing actions, and I can add my action. And it will appear exactly where my playhead is. So if I move forward and then press Shift A again and add my wave, the wave will appear exactly at the playhead. And now let's look at the tracks. I'm going to undo this, and one thing to keep in mind is that you have to have one of the tracks selected. Currently this track is highlighted, so the new strip will appear there. If I click in this area, you'll see that the track gets deselected, and now if I try to add another strip, it won't appear and I'll get an error. So select the track and then Shift A wave. And a little bit about tracks. If I want to add a new track, I can just select any of the tracks over here and hover over in this area. And now again, I can press Shift A. And because I am in this area, that will create a new track for me. I can also go to the Add menu and press Add Track. That does exactly the same. I'm going to undo. And if I want to add a track exactly above an existing track, for example, above this one, which let's rename it to walk, idle, run. And now if I want to add a new track above the walk one, I can press the add menu and choose add tracks above selected. And because I had the walk selected, I got a new track above it. I'm going to undo this as well. I can also move tracks, and that happens by selecting a track and then going to edit, track ordering, and you can move a track one step up, one step down, straight to the very top or straight to the very bottom. Let's move the idle track up, and you'll see how it changed the order of the tracks. I can also do this with shortcuts by pressing page up and page down on my keyboard. And shift page up and shift page down moves a track to the top or to the bottom. I'm going to undo until I have my default order of the tracks. And I'm going to move the check watch and wave strips to the topmost track and reorder them a little bit. And let's activate all of the tracks as well. And let's see what we got. We have the idle animation, but something is weird about the arm. But other than that, we have the walk, and as the character walks, she's looking at her watch. Then she waves, and then she starts running while keeping this wave pose. And this was something that confused me a lot when I was learning the NLA, so I'm happy to unconfuse it for you. It's simply because we didn't keyframe the IK-FK state of each action. So the IK-FK value just stays static, whatever we set last for this arm. And in the last action, we set it to IK. If I switch it to FK now, I'll have my idle, walk, and run action properly, but the check watch and wave actions will be ruined. And yeah, maybe I was stupid because when you say it out loud, it sounds completely obvious that you need to keyframe these settings. So let's do that. All we need to do is go to each action and add a keyframe for the IK-FK state. So I'm going to select the idle action, press tab, select any of the arm widgets, switch to FK mode, which is already the case for me, I want the value of 1, and press I. And then go out of edit mode. And now I'm going to do the same for the walk. You may want to click the spin icon so that you are editing the original animation. And don't worry about this weird pose. If you want to fix this, you can simply shift tab instead of just tab. That will show you the isolated action. And now again, I'm going to add an IK-FK switch pose or keyframe. And let's do the same for the run. I want it at FK. And for the check watch animation, I actually want the arm to be in IK mode, so value of 0, and just add a keyframe by pressing I. And same for the wave. And now let's remove the star from this track. And now we have the idle animation working properly. Then the character switches to looking at her watch in IK mode, and then to waving, and then to running. She keeps this arm pose because extrapolation is set to hold forward, and we haven't blended out of this action. These actions are still performed abruptly, so we need to fix that. So first I want to actually switch the order of these actions. I want the character to wave first, and I want her to wave twice or maybe 3 times, and then check her watch. I realized that I don't have enough room or enough time for these actions. I want the waving and checking of watch to be performed while she's walking, but luckily this is the NLA, it's very easy to fix. Just select the walk and give it 5.5 repetitions and move the run accordingly. Okay, now we have enough time for waving, then checking the watch, and then she can realize that she's late and start running. And now let's set the blend in and blend out for these actions. In this case, auto blending won't work. It will give us weird results. So let's set the blend in and blend out manually. Just set like 10 frames for blend in and out. And now the character will smoothly transition into waving and walking. Then transition out of waving. And now I want to blend in and out of the check watch action. Now she can again transition into checking her watch, out of it, and then she starts running. And I'm going to stick to this timing, but if it doesn't convey the feeling that you want to convey, then you can always change the timing. For example, I may want the check watch to overlap a little bit with the run. I think that gives the feeling of her starting to run because she realizes that she was late. But you know, you can do whatever you like. The next part will be to make this character actually move forward as she walks and runs. And for that we'll use a special technique. I discovered it while messing around and preparing for this video, so you probably won't find it anywhere else. And it will also allow me to correct a mistake that I made in the last video. I said that creating a padding at the end of the action strip by manipulating this end slider under action clip is pointless, which is not really true. But anyway, let's see what we can do. I'm going to go to frame 1 and let's untick all of our tracks and create a new action, and I'll call it move forward. Select the root of the character, press I and choose location at frame 1, and then move to frame 30 and move this root -1 on the y-axis and set a keyframe for location. So now we have the character moving 1 meter in approximately 1 second. Now currently these keyframes have ease in and ease out. This is easiest to see in the graph editor, which we can switch to from here, but actually I can give you a little shortcut. If you hover over the dope sheet, even though it's set to action editor, that doesn't matter, and press Ctrl Tab, that will switch to the graph editor. And then Ctrl Tab again will bring you back to the dope sheet in whatever state you left it. Okay, let's go to the graph editor, press A to select everything and delete on the numpad to frame all curves, and then press T and choose linear, and that will make our movement linear. And now this movement will become constant without ease in and ease out. And one last thing that we need to do here is to select our Y movement, which is this green line here, and go to Channel, Extrapolation Mode, and choose Linear. And that will make this movement that we just created continue at the same speed forever. But the actual keyframes are only between 1 and 30. So let's go back to the action editor. And now I want to move this new action to the NLA, and I actually want it to be at the bottom of the stack. And of course there are many ways to do that, but one shortcut that you can use is to stash the action. That creates an action stash. Now all I need to do is unlock and activate this track, and then maybe rename it to move forward. And it will be just a normal track at the bottom of this stack. Now I'm going to activate all of the other layers as well. And now I have created this forward movement that ends at the end of this strip. First, I wanted to start when the character actually starts walking. So let's move to this frame around here and then move this strip at the same position. And now if I go to the end panel for this strip and extend the end of action clip, that will make the clip longer, and the forward movement will just continue for as long as this strip is, okay? And that is because we set the extrapolation option of the curve earlier. I'm going to want this forward motion to continue for as long as the run cycle continues. So extend it like this. And now we have forward motion, but of course the timing is completely off. But we can use this animated strip time to fix that. So first I'm going to place a checkbox at this option. And then at the beginning of the strip, I'm going to set the strip time to 1 and set a keyframe by pressing this dot. Okay, let's see how this works. I'm going to need the graph editor again. So let's make some space and press Ctrl Tab here. And here I have my strip time curves. I'm going to go to the end of the walk action, set the strip time value to, let's say, 100, and set another keyframe. And that created this curve. So let's see what happens. My character is kind of moving forward. So what is happening here is I basically told this strip that between frame, 55 or 54 and frame 174, it should evaluate 100 frames. So from frame 1 to frame 100 of the actual action. And it is all based on this curve here. So this is an advanced way to retime your actions. So I don't want this ease in and ease out in the animation. The ease in can be a little bit useful because we have this blending of the idle and walk animation. But for the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to make it a linear transition by pressing T. And then I want to go at the end of the run. And let's set this to 300 or something like that. And set another keyframe. And now between frame 55 and 174, we have the timing of the walk. If I play it, I can see that the feet are sliding quite a bit and the character seems to be walking too slowly for the steps that she is taking. So I need to grab these keyframes and then G and Y to move these keyframes up. And that will make the character move further along between these keyframes. It's looking kind of good, but maybe a little bit faster would be better. Maybe a little bit faster. And now between these two keyframes, we have the movement for the run. The run needs to be faster, so this last keyframe needs to go up, further up. I'm pressing Ctrl and dragging with the middle mouse button to resize the curve view, and just middle clicking to move around. Okay, now I'm going to press GY and move this frame up. And let's see what we have for the run. It's a little bit too fast. Yeah, it's looking not too bad actually. If you want to be precise, you can place some ease in between the walk and run, but I'm going to keep it simple here. Okay, I think this example of the animated strip time was a little bit complicated, but I kind of wanted to show it. Here is a more straightforward example. I have this character jumping up, and if I wanted to create a bullet time effect, I could activate animated strip time and set the keyframe so that the curve is more or less flat at the point where the character reaches the highest point in the jump, and then I'll continue the curve up so that the character can land. And I can tweak these keyframes any way I like to achieve the exact timing that I want. So this way to control the timing is very powerful. Make sure to play with it to get a feel for how it works. Okay, so this approach was interesting for the sake of showing some advanced features of the NLA, but otherwise it's kind of needlessly contrived, and it's also a bit limited. It was fine for forward motion, but if I wanted the character to turn right or left, for example, that would be very difficult. In fact, I didn't find a way to do it with this approach. So a much simpler way to do this is to manually add keyframes for the root motion. So I'm going to untick this move forward track, and now the character will stay in place again. I'll press Ctrl Tab over here and create a new action in the action editor and call it walk free, for example. And now here is the start of the walk. I'm going to, let's show the overlays. Go to pose mode, and for the root, set a location keyframe, and then go around the end of the walk and move the character forward to where the walk should end, and add another location keyframe. Again, I want this motion to happen linearly, so I'll select all keyframes, press T and choose linear. Or you can go to the graph editor and set any sort of ease in or ease out that you may need. Again, in this case, I'll be keeping things simple and just keeping the movement to linear. So let's see how our walk is looking. It's kind of okay. Again, I can go to the graph editor and retime it by moving this frame up and down. That will make the movement slower or faster. Then I'll go to the end of the run. My character jumped back to the initial position because of the extrapolation options. For some reason, they're set to nothing. I think the default should be hold forward. So let's set it to hold forward and move the character quite a bit on the y-axis and set another location keyframe. This one will be automatically set to linear. And it seems that the run is still kind of slow, so just move this frame down a bit and that will give it more speed. And there we have our forward motion. Again, if I select the active action over here, you'll see that its blending is set to replace. But because I don't have any other keyframes for the root, the previous move forward action is now disabled. So since I'm not mixing these keyframes with anything, then replace will work just fine and it will move my character forward. Now I want to make this action part of the NLA, so since I don't have the action editor active here, I can just press this button. And now this will work just fine, but if I want to reorganize my tracks and if I want this action to be at the bottom, I can just select this track and press Shift and page down, and that will move this track to the bottom. I'm going to rename it to move free And now we have all animations with a forward motion. But what if I wanted the character to actually go to the side, to the left or to the right after she starts running? I can do that very easily by manually adjusting my walk free action. I actually have a camera in this scene. If I turn it on, I can see my character through the camera. And let's say that I want her to turn left as she nears the camera. I'm going to go to pose mode and select the walk free strip and press tab to edit it. Okay, I wasn't quite sure why when I enter edit mode for this strip, my character goes into the default pose. Maybe if I move it to the top. Oh yeah, if I have it on the top, then I don't have this behavior. So I guess the top of the stack was the ideal position for this track. So here, where the walk action ends, I want to add a rotation keyframe for the root. And then I'll move to the end of the run action and go out of camera mode, and from the top view, I'm going to kind of position the character like this and rotate her a bit as well and enter location and rotation keyframes. So let's see what we get. The movement became a little bit weird, so let's keep working on it. Okay, I stopped the recording to figure things out, and I found out that if I go to around frame 190, and I position my character something like this, and set location and rotation keyframe, that will start creating a decent turn to the left. To improve this, I can select these keyframes and press T and switch them to Bezier. That will make these transitions smoother. And now it looks a little bit better, and I think I can massage some of these keyframes a little bit and make it better, improve it, but let's call this good enough. And there we go, we made the character move to the left exactly with the timing that we wanted. And we can change that timing easily because this is the NLA. A very important and powerful technique when working with the NLA is creating additive layers. It allows you to tweak aspects of your animation non-destructively. Let's see how this works. I have my character running to the left. However, her body is kind of static and it stays completely straight during this part of the animation. It would probably look more natural if her body leaned to the left a little bit. Let's switch to the action editor here and create a new action. I'm going to call it lean left. Then, to create an additive layer, I have to click this active action in the NLA and change blending from replace to add. And that may seem like a very minor change, but actually it completely changes how Blender sets keyframes in this action. For this example, I'm going to be working with the chest control, and let's change this window here to be graph editor, and that will allow us to see what is happening. When I'm in replace mode and I set a rotation keyframe for this control, if I zoom in on the keyframes that were created, you'll see that they have the exact values that we have in the end panel. If I can verify this in the end panel for the curve editor, if I select one of the keyframes and look at its value, you'll see that the value for W is keyframed at 0.991, same as here. The value for Z is 0.135. Let's undo this. And again, set blending to add for the active action. And again, set a rotation keyframe. If we now check the values for the keyframes that were created, you'll see that all of them are set to 0. The W value is 0 and the Z is also 0. And that is exactly what we want in add mode. If I rotate this widget and set another keyframe, you'll see that, for example, the value for W is set to minus 0.028 and not to 0.962. So Blender keyframes the exact values that need to be added on top of the existing actions so that we end up with the pose that we set in the viewport. This theory is quite difficult to explain, but actually working this way is rather intuitive. So let's undo. And I'll make sure my active action is set to add mode. And now just where the character starts to turn left, I'm going to set one rotation keyframe. And then in the middle of the turn, I'm going to rotate her upper body to the left and set another rotation keyframe. And now if I zoom into my curves, you may be able to understand what's happening. At first, all values are kept to 0, which means that the original pose that we had in the NLA will be kept. And then in the middle of the run, because I changed the pose, Blender keyframed these values that will be added on top of the existing actions. And now to blend out of this additive action, I want to go to the frame where the leaning to the left should end, and I want to keyframe 0 values for it as well. And there are a couple of ways to do this. I can simply select these 0 keyframes, Shift D and duplicate them and press X to constrain the movement on the X-axis and just move them over here. And another one is if I undo and go to the lean left action here and set extrapolation to nothing. Then as soon as I go past my existing keyframes, Blender will no longer consider this action, the active action. If I set a rotation keyframe, it will be set as 0 values. And now if I play through the animation, I have the character's body leaning as she is running to the left, which gives a little bit more life to the animation. The advantage of using add blending rather than replace is that it keeps any existing movement, any existing animation, and then adds on top of it. And I think this is not extremely clear in this leaning left animation, so let's push it to the NLA and try something else. Let's go to frame 1, create a new action and call it slouch, for example. And make sure that it's set to additive. Let's make the character lean forward and set a rotation keyframe. And then for extrapolation, I'm going to want this action to be held forward, because that way I can affect the entire NLA animation with just one keyframe. And now if I play through, you'll see that the rocking back and forth of the body was preserved, but we have the character slouching. And also this slouching is applied to the walk. Here where the character checks her watch, this created some undesired poses. To fix this, we could create some keyframes for the IK in the same additive layer, and that will improve our animation. And then the character will also slouch during the run. So I hope you see how additive layers can help you experiment and create variations of your existing animations. Here is another example. I'll just move the whole torso a little bit down and set one location keyframe. And that will move the whole weight of my character down quite a bit. Okay, I think we covered quite a lot, but honestly there is more to talk about in the NLA. So I may make one more NLA video, we'll see. but if you want to learn more right now, I can recommend a couple of resources. I watched and read anything I can find on the NLA, and there is not much that goes in depth. One resource, of course, is the Blender manual. I know it's boring, but read it anyway. Another resource I'd recommend highly is the Rigging Dojo's NLA workshop. It's a paid product, but there is nothing that comes close to it at the moment. The additive layers technique that I shared in this video, I actually learned from that workshop, and you'll find more cool tips and techniques there. I'm not affiliated with the Rigging Dojo, I just like the product. Another one I like is Pierre Schiller's NLA video. It covers the whole workflow in a real-world project that uses the NLA. And there was one video in Russian which I liked. I don't even speak Russian well, but you can use auto-translated subtitles on YouTube. I liked how the author is doing experiments in the NLA and showing you the results. That's the kind of tutorials I like. And yeah, I'll just place all links in the video description. Check them out. Thanks for your support, guys. As always, special thanks to my Gumroad and Patreon supporters. Please like, subscribe, stay notified, and so on. And I'll talk to you in the next video.